So welcome to the Profici Podcast. I'm Anthony. I'm joined today by Jonathan. Jonathan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks very much indeed for having me on today. Yes, so I'm Jonathan Edgeley and the CEO and founder of Montrose Health Group.
Cool. So we're going to start off talking a little bit about you and what made you you, to be honest. So tell us, where did you grow up and how did that affect who you became?
That's a big question and could probably fill the whole 60 minutes. So I'll try and give you a brief synopsis, because my belief is that the formative years really impacted how I was, how I am, and how I behaved. So I grew up in Sheffield, grew up in the leafy suburbs of Sheffield, a place called Forward, which is quite a nice and affluent area. We were opposite the tennis club.
Lovely.
So yeah, it was a great place, and to all intents and purposes, from the outside looking in, we were a wonderful family. Dad was an entrepreneur, businessman, working in the IT and tech industry. Mum worked in a bank. We went to a good school, good Catholic school, and we were with some good families, and you know, as I say, to all intents and purposes, a very good, well-rounded family. But you scratch beneath the surface of that, and my mum was an alcoholic. My father was a workaholic, although I'm not sure whether he'd admit that now.
Yeah.
Still, but that's very much how I saw it. So growing up in that environment was, although I didn't really realise it until I was probably about 12, actually quite challenging. And I think had a pretty significant impact on how I was in my teens.
Interesting. I know you're quite big on this, so I'm going to ask you, what's your morning routine?
So my morning routine can vary. Some days it's brilliant, some days it's not so good. But my morning routine really is I've started getting up about 6 o'clock. I'm the first up, go downstairs, and I will do a short meditation and do some journaling. I will write a gratitude list, which is generally 10 things that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
I will then send that out to a number of people.
Right.
So I share that with them, so I'm accountable. And I find that really, really helpful. What I then do every morning is I'll go and make my wife a cup of tea and take it to her in bed. And I've done that for the last 14 years.
Nice.
And hopefully I will continue to do for the next 14 years.
That's good.
Yeah. Morning routine, I think, is important. For somebody like me, if I'm not in a routine, then that can have a significant impact on the rest of my day if I don't do what I need to do in the morning. So getting up, getting out. Now it's lighter as well. I'll get out with the dog, go for a run, have a shower, and I'm ready to leave the house by 8.
I know you enjoy work, and obviously your dad, you say, was a workaholic. So it must be hard for you to make sure you don't follow in that way. So what do you do outside of work to make sure you...
Well, it's a good question, and I was talking to somebody this morning about that, because my wife's recently become a shareholder in the business, and it now means that a lot of our time is spent talking about the business, where it is, what we do, what we hope to do. So it's become even more important now to start looking at some other things to do outside of work. So I'm in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. So quite a bit of my time is actually spent in 12-step meetings, helping other people, supporting my own recovery. That takes up a lot of my time. But outside of that, other than that, I'm going to go to the gym and I'll go out running and we'll go out walking and we'll go on holiday as and when we can, because it's important to get those times and gaps to go and do some things to make some space.
Let's just briefly talk about that, because I only had this conversation yesterday How old are the kids now?
21, 18, 14, 8.
Well, 'cause what we were saying is, especially when the kids are young, you probably have to cast your mind back on that. But when you do try and do something outside of work, you end up just talking about the kids. It's hard, isn't it? It's almost like you go out, you go for a meal that, especially yours because the kids are so young, you don't get much time.
No.
So you're grabbing an hour or two and then you end up speaking about the kids. So then you've gone from probably talking about the kids to now you're going to be talking about work if your wife's in the business. So it's going to be hard. It's like you've jumped from one thing to another.
Yeah.
And you're going to really have to work on that, aren't you?
Totally. And even though it's an extremely exciting part of my life, and will continue to be so, because my wife is awesome. She's an incredible person, incredible mother. She's now a trained psychotherapist, so she brings a lot of skills into the business, and I love listening to her ideas because they can be a real stark contrast to mine. I mean, I've worked in sales since I was 16, and I'm very driven by performance, numbers, targets, and achieving those things. Where actually looking at some of the softer side of things that really underpin the value side of the service and of the company, they're starting to come in as well. But you're right. I have a very addictive personality, and I can be quite obsessive. And focusing on the success of the business seems to be a real priority of mine. I think we spoke about it before we started this podcast. Some of my years previous to now have been so focused in on business that I've lost perspective of actually what's going on in the home. And I don't feel proud of that.
Yeah.
Because I've seen actually how impactful that can be, as I was growing up, and they say history repeats itself. Well, it can do until we find the courage to be able to change that path.
So if you fall out in work, are you still going to make a brew in the morning?
100%.
You have no choice, will you?
Well,
it's on camera. You're going to have to say that.
Yeah, well, I would, because what I find is, trying to find that sort of balance between business and relationships, family, pleasure. I think is going to require some discipline and some boundaries putting in place. But the way I live my life, I live it in 24-hour chunks. So what actually happened yesterday, I can't do anything about. I can have some influence on tomorrow by what I do today, but what's really important is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing I've got any control over. I don't have any control over tomorrow, really, and I certainly don't have any control over what happened yesterday. So sometimes you just got to draw a line, because otherwise I'm dragging yesterday into today, and if I've got resentment, anger, fear misplaced, it can leak into other areas of my life and business.
Funny enough, the previous conversation I had, Donna said exactly the same thing as that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
What did you want to be when you were younger?
Probably a number of different things. And I probably still want to be this now if I could, but be a Formula One racing driver.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. I love cars. I love driving cars quickly. And I think just being around that, particularly now with how it's held in such high regard in F1, is just fabulous. I don't follow it very closely, but that's what I always wanted to be. What about you?
Originally an athlete. Well, a naval aviator at one point.
Okay.
I think that was just on the back of Top Gun, I think.
Yeah.
Then I think I wanted to own a bar in the Caribbean.
Sure.
I think that was on the back of Cocktail.
You've got to look at Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Wish I had his money. But yeah, it's funny. You almost fall into what you do, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that looking at my dad and what he did and the successes he's had in business. So I worked for him for quite a few years. But he always inspired me because of how successful he was, how he was with people, how he managed people. And I thought, leaving school at 16 with no qualifications, well, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. And I sort of fell into sales, but I very quickly realised I was pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And then seeing how successful my dad had been, and then other people that he employed and were around him who were salespeople, I thought, yeah,
This is a bit of me.
I like this. This is a bit of me. Yeah. And also what I found was that because I was good at it and I was hitting targets, you know, at the end of the month, my sales manager would say, look, we're 10 grand down. Can you find 10 grand? And I'd be like, chest out. Yeah, I'll find you 10 grand. Don't you worry about that. And I'd be the go-to guy. And that really empowered me, positively and negatively, I think.
Yeah.
But I liked being asked and I liked to deliver.
How do you think that's, obviously most things stem from when you're young, but how do you think that come from when you were young? So it's someone coming to you and giving you that buzz. That's obviously stemmed from being young, hasn't it?
Well, I think it has, but you know, we can get deep into some sort of therapeutical aspects of this now. But with my mum, God rest her soul, she wasn't the most nurturing and loving and caring mother.
Yeah.
And I think that was due to her illness. So that wasn't really any fault of her own. It's just how things were. So I don't hold that against her today, but I did when I was younger because I didn't understand it. But today I do. But I think because there was a gap in my childhood that left me, I feel, with quite a low self-worth and lower self-esteem. Somebody coming and asking me for something and to do something really filled me up. So it gave me some false pride, I suppose, in some way. But it wasn't necessarily something that lasted a long time.
Yeah.
But what I learned from quite an early age is that I could attract certain friends by being a certain way. I was very chameleon-like when I was younger. And everything I did, really, was to have people who saw something good in me, whether that be acting out, funny, saying something in class, getting thrown out. Anything that got me some attention, negative or positive, filled something, the hole in my soul. And when I learned that as a skill, it became a companion of mine for many years.
What would you say your biggest or pet hate is, both business and personal?
I think in business, one of my biggest pet hates is somebody not being tenacious, not putting in 100% and not delivering something that they say they're going to deliver.
Yeah.
I've met so many people over the years who have given false promise, you know, and I've believed them.
Yeah.
I'm quite gullible, actually, I suppose, but I've believed them, and then they've not delivered. And the reason why I think I don't like that is because when I was younger, that's what I did. I'd give them a load of waffle, sound like I knew what I was on about, look somebody in the eye, they'd pay me a good salary, I'd tell them I was going to deliver it, and I fell short. And that's because at that period of my life, the things that were more important to me were drinking drugs, alcohol, cocaine. That was my primary driver. It wasn't making my employer money. So I suppose that's how things were for me, and how that sort of sits with me now. It's a reflection on me. So where the pain comes in is normally something that I've done or not done in the past, if that makes sense. So it's transferred. So it's not about that person, it's actually about me.
What do you say your biggest passion is?
Recovery.
Is it?
100%. My biggest passion is staying sober and helping other people to find sobriety. It is my primary purpose. It's why I get out of bed in the morning. I love my wife. I love my kids. You know, I love my business. But first things first, recovery. Because without recovery and without sobriety, I've got nothing. Because it's taken everything from me.
So on that then, what take us back to how it all started really? Was it starting off normal, couple of drinks of a night, then led into 3 nights on the run, 4 nights? Tell me what happened.
Well, addiction is a progressive illness, so how you've described it is pretty much how it happened. For me, I took my first drink when I was about 14, and it was behind the tennis club opposite the house with some friends, and I remember having my first drink and it lit me up like a Christmas tree. Everything that I felt, all the sort of anxiety and the social awkwardness I felt, just diluted, just disappeared. It was just phenomenal. And I felt like the ready break man, you know, with the glow around me. You know, that coupled with some silk cuts, it was heaven. It was absolute heaven. I thought, I've arrived. So then moving into from sort of primary school into secondary school is where things started to progress for me, because I then met kids from other parts of town who were already into smoking dope, doing acid, taking speed and those kind of things. And when I got into that, nothing else mattered. So school, 15, 16, they were heavily influenced by what I did recreationally, because I wasn't that fussed about education. I didn't do particularly well. I don't think I was seen by the teachers necessarily other than as a bad apple, which was unfortunate, because I do believe now that actually I think with the right tutoring I could probably have done quite well in school, but that wasn't to be my path.
So leading on from the days behind the tennis club, how old were you then? Young?
So it's all started when I was sort of 14, 15.
And then what happened?
16, left school, got into some trouble, had to move out of Sheffield, went to live with my dad because my mum and dad had divorced, and my addiction just continued to progress. There was a period of time when I was at my dad's where it wasn't as bad because, you know, I wasn't around people. We were out in the sticks and I was just starting work. But even at work, you know, at 16, 17, we used to go to the pub at lunchtime, play pool and have 3 pints. Come back, get on the phones, you know, sell. Go to the pub on the way home, have a few pints. So it's always been a feature in my life. But what happened from when I was probably 18 onwards, between 18 and 30, when I ended up in rehab, they were really difficult days. Don't get me wrong, difficult years, difficult days. Don't get me wrong, there were some brilliant times. Get onto the rave scene in Sheffield and all of that. We'd be out dancing and we'd be out for a couple of days and it was just awesome. Absolutely awesome. You know, there are parts of it I wouldn't change. But the problem is, you know, at 7 o'clock in the morning, when everybody else is passing out on the floor, I'd be stepping over people going, right, come on, let's go again. And they'd be like, what are you on about? And I sort of knew then that what I was doing wasn't quite normal.
Yeah.
because I couldn't switch off. That was my problem. I didn't know when to say no. There's a great saying. It says, 1,000's too many. No, yeah, 1,000's too many and one's never enough. So it's not having the ability to switch off or stop something, even when it's dark. And I'm talking about in here, not out there.
Yeah. So you went into rehab at 30. Did you put yourself in?
No. My dad put me in. And I remember it now. Ironically, we met in a pub. And he said to me, "Hey, look, son, I'm worried about you and your behaviour. And I think you're an addict." And I went bananas. How dare you say that? How can you call me an addict? I've got a job. I'm wearing a Paul Smith suit. I've got a BMW convertible. You know, an addict is somebody who is homeless. He's on a park bench drinking methylated spirits. That's an addict. I am not that. And he said, "Well, whatever you think, you're going to rehab." And that was that.
Right.
And the bargaining for me was, well, I'm not going until after Christmas because I want to spend Christmas here and I want to spend Christmas with my son. And I stayed and I spent Christmas. And then I was flown out to South Africa. And I arrived there on New Year's Eve, where I expected, because I didn't know anything about rehab, expected champagne and fireworks because it was New Year's Eve. And I was met with a cup of Horlicks and a bag search and a 9 o'clock curfew bed. So it was a real shock to the system. And I was there for 4 months. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I really enjoyed it.
How long did it take you to enjoy it? So I'm guessing over the 4 month period, there's that initial part where you think, shit,
Yeah.
I'm here. How long did it take for you to go, do you know what? I quite like this, clear head.
It was probably a couple of weeks. I realised that my time was coming to an end drinking and using, because things had happened. There had been consequences, significant consequences. And I knew things were coming to an end. And actually, it was the first time that I'd ever stopped, because I was just constantly moving on this treadmill of life and addiction, just constant move. Couldn't sit still. So, piles of letters in my house not opened from HMRC, lots of brown envelopes, fearful of opening them, just neglected them. But coming in and then for the first time sat in there with somebody and with other people who've been through similar situations and experienced things similar to me, it was like something had just been removed from me. My eyes just opened up. It was like, there's a different way to live. I didn't realise that there was a different way to live other than the way that I was living. And I'd already thought that I was probably going to be dead by the time I was 35. So being in a rehab now with other people who are telling me about their stories, and they're talking about spiritual stuff, I felt, this is all right. This is quite cool. And it gave me the space I needed from my life previously. I was a bit like, oh, thank God that stopped. So it was a strange experience, because I'm in a place and I don't know anybody. I'm thousands of miles away from home, but yet I don't want to be anywhere else other than where I was. I didn't want to go home. I was petrified of going home because I didn't want to start that again.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like listening to your story there, and it makes me think, because you and I spoke, I haven't had a drink myself for 5 years, and that was when my wife gave birth to my son, really, just after we went out to wet the baby's head.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I had any sort of addiction. But when you talk, I look and think, you know, I would be the person who wanted to stay out. Or, you know, even the night I can remember I stopped, I was standing in a pub on my own because we'd had murder over something, and you think, what am I doing? And it was at that point I thought, if I don't stop now, she's gone. She'll just leave, you know, and do I want a life of a split family, you know what I mean? So, all right, I'm just going to have a couple of weeks off. And then that led to, didn't tell anyone, that led to a couple of months. And I always remember we were on an all-inclusive holiday, and my son, and he was a baby at that time, literally, and a dad. And the sweat was pissing out of me, and I was drinking a cup of tea, and she was like, "You stopped drinking?" I said, "Yeah." That was the first she probably knew, you know what I mean? But, and I just haven't. And now it's more like, do I want to go back? Just.
Well, what are the benefits of boozing?
I remember reading a book once, and they were talking about, imagine I'm going on to Dragon's Den now and trying to pitch alcohol to 4 dragons. So I've come up with this thing, right, okay, it can kill you. Oh, right, okay. Not all the time, but it can. It's so powerful, it can clean surfaces. You know. Does it taste nice? No, it tastes like shit, to be honest. Until you get used to it.
Yeah.
But you want to invest. You know, it's like, it's crazy, isn't it? You know, but
I agree. I think if it was found now, it'd be a banned substance.
Yeah.
And I, you know, thank you for sharing what you just have there as well with those 5 years, because I think it's important for people to hear that, because my experience when I meet somebody and they are considering stopping drinking, or, and this is usually the case, their mum or their dad or their brother, their sister, their husband and their wife are wanting them to stop drinking, what we always come up against is someone will say, well, why would I want to stop drinking? You know?
You need to do it for yourself, don't you? You can't have anyone really tell you.
No, you're right. You can't. And I suppose in the situation where my dad said that to me that night, I knew the game was up, and it was actually like somebody chucking me a lifeline.
You were hoping for someone to step in.
I didn't know it. I didn't know it at the time. But when it happened, I felt a real deep sense of relief. Thank God somebody's seen me. And that's the situation. So when you say there that, you know, until somebody's motivated to do that and to change, yeah. But actually, sometimes something needs to happen in order to get somebody into that place of, Christ, I do. I didn't realise it was quite as bad as it was, or having the impact it is. Because when I was drinking, I was blissfully ignorant to anything that was going on around me, pretty much. I was the most selfish man in the world. It was all about me. Everything was about me. You know, my wife wanted to tell me about her day. I'm not bothered. I want to tell you about mine. You know, do you want to hear about what the kids have done today? Not really. No, because I've had a shit day. And I've been in the pub. Don't ruin my high. Feeling pretty good right now. And I'm going to have a glass of wine just to take it to the next step. And even saying that out loud breaks my heart. But that was my reality.
It stems from a lot of things, that. And then if you listen to sports people as well, who are pretty much addicted to what they do, elite sports people, and they'll say, what's the number one thing you need to be to be successful? And they're like, selfish. You've got to be selfish. I suppose that in itself, it doesn't matter what type of addiction it is, it's just all about you, isn't it?
Absolutely. And being in recovery, we also have to be selfish.
Yeah.
Because I've got to preserve my recovery. And in order to do that, there are certain things that I need to do each day, 2 or 3 times a week, go to meetings, be around people, sponsor people, support other people. And that does have an impact. But the upside to it is I'm not pushing past my wife and kids to get to the pub.
Yeah.
I'm coming home at night. My wife's not worried that I'm not going to come home or be drink driving. And I'm, to some degree, emotionally regulated.
Yeah.
Ish.
You're on
you
it.
know.
Who would you say is the most influential person in your life?
There are a couple of people who I find very, very influential, but they're mainly people who have gone before me or people in recovery. Mm-hmm. You know, and these aren't people who are necessarily that well known. I mean, probably the biggest influence in my life, somebody who's passed away, and they were the person that wrote the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, they were an inspiration in terms of what they did and how they did it, and what they saw, and what they created in 1939 has still not changed today in 2024. Mm-hmm. It's the same book, it's the same program, it's the same principles, right? And that, from a business plan perspective, is watertight. Yeah. You know, started off with 2 people in the group. There are now millions worldwide, and they've not changed the formula. Now, that's inspiring. Yeah. But then there are people on a local level that I meet who have gone through some really challenging times, faced a lot of adversity, that have come through the other side of it, and are doing things that actually the odds were against them to be doing what they're doing today. Mm. So mainly people in recovery are the people that inspire me.
That's good.
Yeah.
What would you say people misunderstand most about you?
Passion. My passion can sometimes come across as arrogance, aggression, selfishness. Yeah. And although I see that as a very sort of positive thing, it can sometimes have a negative impact. Mm. So my wife will say to me, "Why are you shouting?" And I go, "I'm just being passionate." You know, yeah. "Why are you talking so loudly? It's 11 o'clock at night, the kids are asleep." "Yeah, I know, but I'm feeling really passionate about this." And that's that stuff that lights me up. Mm. It's when I have those moments as well, you know, and you think, actually, this could have a real impact on someone's life.
Would you change anything?
Would I?
Yeah, about you.
Yeah, probably. Quite a few things.
Pick one.
I think when your last podcast guests would talked about their height, I'd certainly change my height. I'd like to be a bit taller, but I'm blessed that my boys are all taller, or will be all taller than me, so that's not a bad thing. But the other thing that I would want to change on a serious level is I get scared. I can be quite fearful about the future. And I can feel very fearful about the success of the business and of the service, because I think that will directly affect my life and my wife's and the children's. Mm. That's proportionate to financial fear, insecurity. Yeah. So that's one thing I would like to change, and I hope to change. I'll start another course of therapy next week. I've got a 12-week course of therapy to look at some deeper emotional aspects of me that still need some work, because I'm far from the finished article.
Because I was going to ask, what is your biggest fear? And obviously you've just answered it there, but because we've had this conversation separately, haven't we? And
yeah,
my biggest motivator, I think, is fear. And then it's having that ability to be able to stop, take stock of where you are, instead of just moving straight on. And that's something I just don't know how to deal with. I don't know how to say, right, we've got to this point and celebrate it. It's just like, right, tick, come, let's move on.
What's next?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. And that's, I suppose, what I was talking about earlier, is this, that inability to stop and just need to keep moving. And I think that it's a skill that I need to learn.
Yeah.
And the only way I'm going to learn that is to go inside and do some work. And once I find what that is, I can work on it with the therapist. We can work on that. And that can then be removed. Or I can come to terms with it, because it'll be something that's happened to me at some point in my life that will affect that sort of self-propulsion. There's no doubt. Because that fear actually could turn into something else that's positive. Because fear, although serves its purpose and protects us on some level, actually it can also be a hindrance and stop me from doing some of the things that, not that I necessarily want to do, but may need to do.
So I guess you've learned lots, especially the people that you've met. But can you pinpoint what's the most important lesson that you've learned in life?
I think probably one of the most important lessons I've learned in life is to listen. Seek advice from people who've gone before me and understand how they've done it, rather than me thinking I know how to do it and have all the answers. And learn the practice of humility. The real, on a deep level, that acknowledging I'm not always right. And that's taken time, and that's only come through working on myself.
What's the proudest moment of your life?
Well, I've got a few. In the birth of my children, of course, is a proud moment. But the proudest moment for me was the day that I accepted sobriety, my second surrender, which was nearly 10 years ago now. That's a proud moment, because I didn't think I could do it.
What would you say is unique about you?
Good questions, these. Got me thinking. Well, I think in terms of what's unique about me from a business perspective is that the combination of having a good understanding of sales and marketing, but also having a real deep passion for recovery, combining the two things together and being able to create a service. That is a unique combination in my mind. And having a real passion for helping people. So you it's sort of no one thing. It's a number of things all mixed together, blended into one, that I think makes me the service unique and the offering.
What excites you now?
Helping people. What really excites me is helping people. Seeing somebody.
You can see that, seeing the way you've answered
it. Seeing somebody broken, hopeless, transition into hopeful. There is nothing more rewarding and exhilarating and emotional than witnessing that.
Mm.
And seeing somebody, as I say, that pain in somebody's eyes where they think everything's gone and done, and watching that journey as they start to move into that state of, actually, might be all right now.
It's a funny question, this next one, because I'm almost a believer of things that happen in your past, what makes you who you are now. But do you have any regrets?
There was, I think Robbie Williams sang it, didn't he? No regrets. Frank Sinatra, regrets. He's had a few. I was talking to my wife about this, actually, and you know what? Yeah, I do. I'm not going to share what all of those are, but yeah, I do. I do have some regrets. There are things that I've done that I'm not proud of.
Oh, yeah.
And there are things that have happened in my life that I wish I could remove, and I wish I could change. But like I said, I can't go back. It's only what I do now and how I remedy those things in my life. Yeah. I struggle when I meet people who go, they don't have any regrets. Well, I certainly question it. Somebody's always
You
done
can't have
something.
that much of a clean life to date.
It's bollocks.
Yeah.
Or you're in denial. And we like to say denial stands for don't even know I am lying.
Yeah. Or you're that egotistical, you think. You know what I mean?
You could go down the philosophical route and say everything happens for a reason. And I do believe that.
To a certain extent. But there's probably things that's happened in the past, myself included, where you think, if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't change this now.
Mm.
It just shouldn't have happened.
Mm.
It just wasn't right.
Mm.
Mm.
Totally.
What keeps you up at night?
My bladder. Reaching the dizzy heights of 48. I worry about the business. Because, and this is where I have to keep myself in check and hit that humility switch, is that we make a difference in people's lives. And I worry that if it doesn't succeed, then I'm not going to do that anymore.
Mm.
And I'm also going to worry, if it doesn't happen, that people are going to look at me and go, told you. There is that.
Would they though? Or is that just something you've got?
I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
Probably wouldn't. I'm not that important.
Yeah.
I think I am sometimes, but I'm not that important, really.
So to give you a break from this therapy session, let's talk about the business.
Yeah.
Tell
I've
us
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Deep.
Tell us all about the business.
Yeah. So we set up Montrose Health Group about 2.5 years ago now, and it was basically I'd worked previously for other companies, setting services up in London and in Cheshire, which I thoroughly enjoyed doing, and I learned a huge amount from each one of those companies and their owners and funders and founders. But it just got to a point where I thought, actually, I'd really like to have a go at doing this myself. And but I didn't have any money, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to raise the money for seed funding. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to set up a business, and I'm going to see if I can bootstrap it. And I was able to do that. I got a client. We put a piece of work together, put a program together for somebody. They paid us, we did a great job. They were happy, and paid all the consultants and all the suppliers. That left us with some change to be able to put a website together, do some marketing, and start to develop the business. But I went into it not knowing whether it was going to work. So I had a bit of a gung-ho attitude towards it. It's like, well, I got nothing to lose. I'll give it a shot. And then the business has just evolved and grown. And we've, decided to go down the regulatory route with the Care Quality Commission so we can provide medical services, because I was really wanting to be able to offer people medical services and support for alcohol addiction, drug addiction. So we're able to offer detoxification, which requires a certain skill set and professionals to do that. So that's what we did. It took us 9 months to get the registration. It was the most amount of work I've ever done in my life, I think. And it was hard, it was tedious, but it was so worthwhile when we got that letter to say that we'd been given our registration. So it was just like, yes, we're now a proper business. So it was like, yes, celebration. And then it was like, oh shit, now we've got to really make this thing work. We've got a bucket load of compliance and policies and processes we need to follow. But the business really has gone from offering just sort of therapeutic wellness retreats into offering medical retreats. So we're the only provider in the UK that offers medical retreats. And what we tend to do is work on a one-to-one basis. So we usually work with sort of medium to ultra high net worth individuals who are looking for a very discreet off-grid solution. And we provide those retreats in Derbyshire. But we've also opened a 4-bed rehab in Sheffield, which just focuses on drug and alcohol addiction. That's my passion project, really. So the business is diversified ever so slightly, but we're sat firmly in the health and wellness space. It's designed to help people live a better life.
So what have you learned from being in this field that you think people should know?
That they can recover from a seemingly hopeless condition. And that actually pride comes before a fall. And whatever might be going on for somebody, if they find the courage to be able to ask for help, in most cases, something can be done. And that hope piece, which I talk about a lot, stands for hold on, pain ends. And it's the most important piece of the jigsaw. So when we go and meet people who are feeling hopeless, I can shine a beacon of light and go, do you know what? I've been where you've been. Yeah. I get that. Or they're crippled with anxiety or fear, or they've had a bereavement, or whatever it might be. Yeah. Is the look, we can help, and just very compassionately moving someone through that process. And that's when that journey starts. Journey's an overused word, but there's no better way to describe it, because it is. Talk about it being a journey, not a destination, this stuff.
What's been the most difficult part of the last 2.5 years?
In business? Knowing when to focus on what we've got rather than focusing on what we haven't. So I like looking at what we can do next. So we have a great business, some excellent people working in it, but I'm always looking for the next thing. What's the next move? What are we going to do here? We can do that. What about this? I drive everyone mad with it. So I've had to get some really good people in who can just help me to focus on the now and then deliver the now that will allow us to consider things for the future. But that's been the most difficult part, is focusing on what we've got rather than where I think we need to go.
I interviewed Matt Lum recently, and that's something he said. He said most founders call them what you will, but founder, are all over the place. Entrepreneurial, you know, and you almost need a CEO in between those and the staff that listen to some of the things they say and implement them, or just disregard some of the things, or keep that going. Because it really made me think, because I don't think you can be a founder and a really good CEO of your own business. I think it's very difficult, because I've got that many ideas and you want to try this and you want to try that. You need that person next to you. And you said this before, you need another you to go, no, calm down, or that's a load of bollocks, whatever it is. Now, I think you can do it in someone else's company. I could walk in as a CEO of someone else's business, and you've been there yourself, haven't you, when you're growing, and because you haven't got that connection with it, you almost see it a little bit differently.
Sure.
So you say, no, why are you doing that? But throw everything at me and I can deal with it for you. And it's interesting, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I would love that. I'm not sure how everyone would cope with another me, but
they wouldn't be the same as you.
no, I know.
Would they?
No,
They might.
it just wouldn't work.
No. It's like you coming into this company as a CEO, you'd be different. You'd still be driven, you'd still be everything else, but you wouldn't be all over the place. And me going into yours was probably the same.
Sure. Yeah. Well, should we do that?
We'll have a chat, mate. Yeah. Where do we sign?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it is, isn't it? I mean, and it's brilliant being able to take that sort of helicopter view of something for a moment. But, you know, day to day when you're in it and, you know, you're thinking actually, ooh, you're looking at cash flow, you're looking at clients, you're looking at the future, where do we go next? And all the minutiae of the stuff that, I'm not a details man, all the stuff around leases, policies, compliance, and I do have people helping me with all of that, because that stuff's mind-bending for me. I have the attention span of a gnat.
Yeah.
So to sit down with a book of paper to start going through it, I mean, I'm first page and I'm off doing something else. I can often find myself in the morning brushing my teeth and then find myself in the kitchen making a cup of tea and thinking, how have I got here? Because the mind is just constantly whirring away.
These were all laughing at me the other day because someone sent a contract in it. It was like 28 pages. He said, have you read that contract? I was like, I read my name. You know, I was like, wow, it's just one of them things, isn't it?
Totally. Yeah.
What do you wish you would have known before starting the career? Or even, let's not say your career, because that's going back. And there's probably loads of things you changed there. But even starting Montrose,
what would I have
what do you wish you would have
known?
No.
How difficult it is. How difficult it is and how lonely it is actually setting up a business. And how competitive the industry is, because, you know, when I first came into it, I thought it was all hugs and backslapping and everyone's beautiful, everyone's in recovery and everything's gorgeous. But actually it's a highly competitive space. You know, like there are in all businesses, there are some people that operate very ethically. There are some people that perhaps don't. And I think I was quite naive to that at the beginning. I think also having a better understanding and bringing somebody in earlier that could look at the financial aspects of the organisation. Sounds rather grand, that organisation of the business, you know. Just to be able to support me on strategically what we can and what we can't do. Because I'm not the best with money.
Do you like to spend it?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like to spend it.
Like I told, I'm addicted to shopping.
Yeah.
But not for myself. I just love buying things.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And it can be a problem.
Yeah.
I have to put a spending ban sometimes on month to month, because the other thing is, what I can find is, if I'm, for example, I don't know whether you do this, but I do, is like I might be on a shopping site, let's say on my phone, and I'm filling my basket. Nice shoes, trainers, suit, you know. And that activity is done to stop me thinking about something that I need to be thinking about. There's something going on inside me that I need to change by
like a dopamine fix, isn't
doing
it?
something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the distraction. I don't always buy it, by the way.
No. If I'm ordering trainers, I'll say I've got you a new pair of trainers, and she'll say, how many pairs have you bought for yourself? She's like, I don't need anything.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point sometimes where I'll go on a website and I'll notice a basket has got like 6 items in, and I'll click on that basket and I think, oh, wow, yeah, I put all that was in there. But at the time, they were the most important thing. It's like my life couldn't have carried on without those 6 items.
Yeah.
And then you forget about them and you go back. And it's like...
I get that. I once, when I was working at a company, we got a staff work do, and I needed to buy a Belstaff leather jacket for this particular evening, and I couldn't find one in stock anywhere, and it became a real obsession for me to find it. I found one, paid overs for it. The staff do was cancelled. I wore it once and realised it didn't suit me anyway.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And it's sat in a wardrobe doing nothing but gathering dust.
If you'd have found, it sounds stupid, but I know what you come from. If you'd have found a shop in London that stocked it, and you'd look, wouldn't you, and think, I could probably get to London and get back before this too.
Yeah, probably have a meeting down there as well. Yeah. And then come back, ready to go.
Mm-hmm. And then it's cancelled.
Yeah.
What a piece of advice would you give to a 16-year-old you?
Don't do drugs. I think look, I mean that was a part of my life that was always going to happen. I'm genetically predisposed to that happening, right? That was that stage was set. But I probably would be saying focus more on education. Actually try and do something at school. Because I look at my kids now and thank God they are much more academic than I am. And the one thing I feel embarrassed about at times is when I'm asked to help with homework and I don't understand it. I don't get it. And I feel I should, as a father, be able to understand and get that. But I don't. And I think that's primarily through lack of interest in education.
Yeah. Last couple of questions now. Excuse me. I was going to ask, what piece of advice would you give the listeners? But that's me being hopeful that there's anyone going to be listening. What piece of advice would you give to my mum? It might be the only person who watches this.
Your mum and somebody at my work.
Yeah.
So I think that the advice would be honest. Honesty is the best. My dad always used to say to me, honesty is the best policy. And I used to say, is it bollocks? Because I didn't live a particularly honest life. But actually looking back and I could have saved myself a whole heap of pain if I've had the courage to be honest. But I didn't, because I was always protecting my own arse. So, honesty. Be good to yourself. Put yourself first sometimes from a self-care perspective.
Yeah.
And then, whoever is listening at my work, it's work harder.
Yeah. If you want a promotion, you have to work really, really hard.
Yeah. Overachieve targets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next?
What's next? We've got about another hour to discuss what's next.
Yeah.
I think really what's next for me in the development of the business is to look at how we can utilize digital technology. Donna was talking earlier about, I think somebody asked her about AI and where does that feature, and what we want to be able to do is to drive down the cost of treatment services so it can be accessible for everybody. And I think through some level of automation, being able to utilise the skill sets of the practitioners and the experts that we've got, and somehow digitise some of that, and be able to put that out in an app or online in some way. So, because I don't want cost to be a barrier to somebody getting well.
Yeah.
And if we can go some way to achieving that without us having to just bring people into the service for free, which we've done in the rehab on occasion, if we can create something that allows them to be able to access it from their home because they may be agoraphobic or using and not be able to get out and completely closed off, I think if we could do that, I'd feel like I'd be leaving a bit of a legacy.
Right.
Because everything that we've done, like with some of the services I set up and I started in, the cost was high and made it prohibitive. And opening the rehab, people are phoning up and saying, "Oh, well, I need help. I need your services," and quote the price, and I just can't afford it. And my heart sinks when somebody's ringing up and they've found the courage to be able to ask for help, and I'm going, I can't. And then I'm having to refer them into the NHS or something else that I know they're going to be on a waiting list for, because sadly it's under-resourced at the moment. That upsets me.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your honesty.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to the toilet now for a cry. Cheers,
You've
mate.
held it together well. Thank you very much
Thanks,
indeed.
buddy.
Thank you.